Okay, good morning. Please chat in the chat box if you can hear us. It would be so wonderful. Crystal's going to be sending out the YouTube link if you'd like to listen or access it in that realm as well. That's fine. We're just happy that all of you are here. So good morning. We'll try this again. Thanks for hanging in there with us and being patient. We so appreciate you, all of you. So this is the Keep Exit training. Welcome. You should have gotten an email with the actual link, which is probably how we got here. You should have also gotten 2 attachments. One of them is the test administration manual that the teachers will be using, and make sure it has exit on it. If it's not, it might be the entry one. Want to make sure we have the right ones because they do look similar. And then you should also have the student materials packet, which again also says exit. So just kind of keep an eye out for that as well. So our review for the day, our agenda briefly will be to review the purpose of the KEEP. There are actually 6 purposes, and if you turn to page 7 in the test administration manual, you'll see bulleted here the 6 purposes. We're actually really only going to hit on 2 of them that are really key. We'll be going over the logistics of the actual assessment, and then reviewing each question, and then go over the accommodations piece at the end, and we'll also be talking about Data Gateway, which we have some exciting improvements to share with you on that today. So the purposes that we really want to hit hard on, we know, yes, there are still those 6, and they are still part of the entry and the exit. But the 2 we want to hit on are understand the influence and impact of full-day kindergarten on at-risk students for both short and long-term. So that is important to keep in mind. And then, of course, provide opportunities for data-informed decision-making and cost-benefit analysis of these early learning initiatives. Of course, we want to find out, are they working, and if so, maybe we can get some more money in the future and funding so we can actually get some more of these full-day programs up and running. So the structure and setting, and again, I'm just kind of following along, starting on page 7 in the test administration manual. You'll notice it says structure and setting here. We've moved on to that, and we'll go through each one. Just like the entry, a certified teacher needs to be trained on the KEEP, and that's who is giving it. So again, a certified teacher who's also been trained on giving the exit assessment, which of course being part of this webinar is part of that. And then of course there are pieces that are small group. There's 2 questions that are small group, and then the rest of the test is to be given by individual administration. And you'll notice it talks about in the manual that if you are giving this assessment, all of the questions that are individual administration must be given all in one sitting, and then the small group can be done at a separate time. And so we'll actually be talking over some of those pieces shortly. So the testing window is the last 4 weeks of kindergarten. So whatever the last 4 weeks of kindergarten is for your LEA, your school, that is the exit testing window for you. The data entry is due into Data Gateway by June 15th, and you'll see we have the HTTPS on there for you in case you maybe forgot where the Data Gateway was or have an old link attached. So as far as administration time, excuse me, we have 13 scoreable questions, and 8 of them are observational. That's the social emotional piece, that inventory at the end. It takes approximately 20 minutes for individual questions to be administered, and then about 20 minutes for the small group questions, and that's just done during the school day. And we kind of have some options, so some potential models. It could be that you test 1 to 2 students per day during that 4-week window. Perhaps you hire a sub for a few days to cover that teacher to get the assessment done. That's another option. And then you could end kindergarten a few days early and have the data done that way. And of course, if you look at board rule R277-419, you'll notice you still have those 12 options between entry and exit that you are able to use if your district or charter allows. Or you could do a certified and trained testing team. We have heard that there are some people doing that, so it gives you at least some potential models of administration that you could be using to give this assessment. And then if you turn to page 8, you have the preparation. You'll notice there's kind of a lot. That's pretty meaty this go around, so make sure you're really reading through that. So be sure to read and understand all of the information in this test administration manual. Make sure you work with school administrators and parents to establish a testing schedule if needed, and then of course obtain and set up the needed testing materials, including. So this is kind of a big list. So you'll need, of course, 1 copy of the test administration manual, which I believe Liz has already let you know in the chat box that will be coming out at a later date, that you will get the actual hard copy like this. You should also have 1 copy of the student materials booklet, which looks like this. And then the copy of the scoring sheet, you can either do it paper, which is in the back of the test administration manual as it was last time on page 52, start on page 52. Or you could just enter it while you're doing the test on Data Gateway. And actually, that was a little rocky at the beginning of the year. I'm sure you all remember. But hopefully, when we show you the Data Gateway piece today, you'll recognize that it's gotten much better. So you'll also need a pencil and a blank sheet of paper for students to be using during the assessment. You'll need a set of 10 basic manipulatives, just whatever you typically use in your classroom. You'll need one set of the texts for question number 5, which is emergent reading, and so you'll actually have to print those out. You'll see they're on pages 58 through 63 in the test administration manual, so you actually need to print those out and make these little books. And so you'll just have these 3 books to be making. And then 1 copy of question 7 writing paper, which looks like this. And you notice it's front and back in case you have some very intense writers in kindergarten, which would be exciting to see. And then you'll also need copies or sheet protectors or dry erase markers for certain questions such as 9, 11, and 12, which here are those. And then privacy dividers for questions 6 and 7. So those are the small group pieces. So at this time, it looks like a lot of you have already been asking questions in the chat box, so I'll ask you to continue doing that, but we're actually going to move into the actual overview of the assessment. So it looks like the literacy overview, we have the first question is listening comprehension, which we had a similar one at the beginning of the year. Question 2 is phonemic awareness. We're going through initial, medial, and final sounds. Number 3, the phonemic awareness for its segmentation and substitution in the same questions. We put those together. And then we have number 4 is phonics and word recognition, which includes some real words and some nonsense words. Number 5 is the emergent reading, those books that I was just showing you. And then number 6 is encoding, which is going to be done in small group, and number 7, which is writing, which will also be done in small group. So if we go through question number 1, you'll notice it's a very similar look to the last time, to the entry. So we have the content area, the standards that it's aligned to, but then you'll notice this new piece is grouping for administration, and for this one it's individual. The only questions that are not individual are questions 6 and 7, which are the encoding and the writing, and those are actually done in small group. Then you have the instructions in blue, and of course you're reading aloud the pieces in bold. Anything that's in italics, then you go ahead and that's what you're doing. Then you have the scoring in green, which is below, and actually continues on to the next page. In the purple you have the accommodated instructions, and then below you have the materials if there are any, and the sample record of response. So if we look at this specific question, for the instructions, it says, I'm going to read you a story about Antonio's walk in the springtime. Listen carefully as I will begin asking you questions at the end. So the teacher will actually read the text that's in the test administration manual, and then after completing the text, we'll say, now I'm going to ask you about the story. In a complete sentence, tell me, how did Antonio know it was spring? If the student for some reason doesn't answer in a complete sentence at this point, you can say, start your sentence with, Antonio found, and then your turn, and pause for them to give you that response. If the student doesn't give you at least 2 examples, then you can prompt the student for more details by asking, what else did he see, hear, or feel? As far as scoring goes, there's kind of 2 little pieces to scoring. So the first one is the oral language responses. That score is based on the student's production of the oral response, not necessarily their actual content. That's where the second piece goes in. So they have 2 points if they answer in a complete sentence without a prompt. 1 point if they answer in a complete sentence when provided with the sentence starter. And then, of course, 0 if it's in words or phrases. But then listening comprehension, that's where the content comes into play. So they have 4 points if the student answers with at least 2 accurate examples of signs of spring from the story without prompting. And then we gave you those examples in there. Warm weather, colorful flowers, birds chirping, caterpillars on the steps, that sort of thing. 3 points, it continues on with at least 2 accurate examples of signs of spring from the story with prompting, and then it moves on to less and less, to 1 and 0. And then, of course, we have accommodated instructions for students who are deaf or hard of hearing, as well as students who are nonverbal. You'll notice there are no materials for this specific question, and then you'll see the sample record of response. Any questions on that or how the manual is set up before we continue on to number 2? And I'll kind of reach out to my team to find out how we're doing with questions. Good? All right. Let's move on then. So question 2, phonemic awareness. So I'm not going to go through all the standards and content area, but just as a reminder, the grouping for administration for this one, it is also individual. And you'll notice a little asterisk on little pieces after the word first and last and middle. The reason for that is teachers can use any position term that the students are familiar with, such as beginning, middle, initial, beginning, initial, first for the first one, middle or medial for the middle one, and then final, ending, or last for that last piece. So just kind of understand we want to be using the same information and language that we are for instruction as we are for the assessment. So that's why that asterisk is there. If they want to use beginning instead of first, that's fine as well. And that is in the instructions. I'll kind of show you, it's just right up here under the blue bar. Also a note, when you see the M within those slashes, you can say the sound of the letter M. So if you're unfamiliar with that, maybe you're a new teacher, that might be new to you. So the question is asked is, listen to the word mat. The first sound in mat is M. What's the first sound? And then you'll pause and going through it. Now I want you to tell me the first sound you hear in these words. The words are yawn and van. And then there's a little note there. If the student says the letter name or says all of the sounds, you can prompt only once, just say the first sound. Then there is a discontinue rule for this. If the student does not isolate any of the first sounds correctly, then discontinue and move on to question number 3. If they can't isolate the first sound, it's very unlikely that they're going to be successful with final and medial sounds as well. For the accommodated instruction, and scoring. It's 1 point for each correct sound, so it's pretty basic and simple in scoring. And then there are accommodated instructions for students who are deaf or hard of hearing and students who are also nonverbal. Again, there are no materials for this, and you can see the sample record of response on page 15 down towards the bottom. Question 3, another one that's on phonemic awareness, and again, this is also to be given by individual administration. And the teacher can again use a position term that they're familiar with, such as final, ending, or last. So we'd still have that asterisk in there as well. Students are allowed to tap out sounds or use some other action. Maybe they section them out on their arm, as long as it isn't coached or encouraged by the teacher to do so. So if they do it automatically on their own, that's completely fine. However, it's not okay for the teacher to prompt them with that or give them that as well. So the questions are, listen to me as I say all the sounds in the word dog. Dog. Now you say all the sounds in the word dog, you pause. Now I will change the last sound to a t. And now I will say the new word is dot. And then you actually move on to item 1 and item 2 within those pieces. For scoring, 1 point for each correctly segmented word, or segment and sound in the word map, 1 point for saying the new word man, and then the same for the last 2. We also have accommodated instructions on page 17. Again, there are no materials for this, and we have a sample record of response that might clear up any questions as well. Is there a question from, we have a question. Okay.
Should prompt only once per word or prompt only once throughout?
Okay, so question 2, this is on question number 2. So, and do you have your microphone on? Can you repeat that?
The question was prompt only once per word or prompt only once throughout on question number 2 for the initial, medial, and final sounds.
Sure. So I think what you're asking is on the just above that discontinue rule. If the student says the letter name and says all the sounds, prompt only once, just say the first sound, and then you'll notice actually down below under the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4th blue bullet, if the student says the letter name or the sounds, prompt only once, just say the last sound. So you can say it once with the first sound and once with the last sound. Hopefully that helps. Great question.
Another question brought forth was, why are some of the questions similar to DIBELS, which is also state mandated? Why are we double testing some skills?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you so much for bringing that up. So DIBELS in kindergarten is not state mandated. Actually, DIBELS is only mandated in our state for grades 1, 2, and 3. It could be that your district or charter school is mandating DIBELS in kindergarten, and if so, that would be a district or charter school question. Anything else?
The last question we have received is, when we do the example, can we tap the example or would that be prompting? That would be considered prompting, so you're not allowed to provide that sort of prompt for your students. Like Sarah said, if your student chooses to tap it out on their arm or tap it on the table, that's fine, but if you model that for them, then that's considered prompting, and for standardization, that's not allowed.
Yep. Thanks, Liz. Great. All right. Let's move on to question 4, which begins on page 18. It's the phonics and word recognition piece. So you'll notice this one actually at the top it says, and I'll kind of just show you where that's at, display the student material sheet for question 4A. You'll understand why it says 4A in a moment. So that is the first one. It looks like this. So you'll see it has gum at the top and then some words below it. So you'll say, listen as I read this word, and you'll, of course, point. Listen as I read this word gum, and you'll move your finger quickly across it. I can say each sound and then read the whole word like this, gum. And then you say the sounds continuously without pausing with each. And just to be really clear on that, what we're saying without pausing, we don't want you to say g, Okay, that would be a lot of pausing. So just as quickly as you can moving through that, that would be really helpful. So you're just gum. So you're moving it quickly. It's your turn to read some words. Point to the first word, so you would be pointing here. Try to read the whole word. If you can't read the whole word, say each sound first, and then read the word. So you're going through. Then you'll notice, after they're done with that, then you turn the page. So this is 4B. So that's why it's called 4B. Now read some words that are made up. Point to the first word. Try to read the whole word. If you can't read the whole word, say each sound first and then read the word. So if the student doesn't know a sound, go ahead and wait 3 seconds and then point to the next sound and prompt the student to continue. There is a discontinue rule. If the student does not know any sounds in the first 5 words, so that's going back to this page, if they are unsuccessful on this page, then you don't need to do the second set. For each word, mark 1 point for each correct letter sound, which is 31 points possible because between the 2 sets of words there are, excluding gum, of course, gum is not scored, there are 31 points possible. In case you're thinking, there's 10 words, how are there 31? It's because the word zips has an S on the end. Also, 1 point for blending each word correctly, or 2 points for reading the word correctly without blending. So, for example, if we have a student who says wag, then yes, they would get the 3 points for each correct letter sound. They would also get 1 point for blending the word correctly. They wouldn't get 2 points because they didn't just say wag, rocked, cub. So if a student does that, then they get the 2 points. That's the only way they can get those 2 points for blending. If they automatically do that, if they just say wag, they still are able to get the 3 letter sounds correct. So just to, hopefully I'm clear on that. With the accommodated instructions, we do have those for students who are nonverbal or who are deaf of hard of hearing. And then, of course, you have your materials, which we looked at in the student manual, and then you'll notice the sample record of response. Now, I'm going to pause here and I want you to take a moment to actually look at that page 19, the sample record of response, and see if you have any questions on how that's scored. We had some questions on that before, and if we don't, then I'll move on. But if we do, please let us know. We can attend to those. There's none?
There's one question. Terralyn asked that the script mirrors Dibbles, but the scoring is contradictory to Dibbles, and do you think that may confuse teachers?
Well, it is mandatory that they read the test administration manual before testing, so as long as they are reading it as they should, it should not be confusing. Great question. Any other ones that have come up? No? Okay. Well, if you do have any questions, we do have a slide that has our emails at the end, so if you come across something when you are reading through that, then you can go ahead and actually give us a shout out and ask those questions at that time. Any questions on the first 4?
Can we call them nonsense words?
Instead of made up ones.
So the question, in case you didn't hear, the question was, can we call them nonsense words? So for standardization of the assessment, no, we cannot. We have to follow the script just as we would any other standardized assessment. That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. All right.
Please clarify the scoring one more time for question 4.
Oh, okay. Let's go back. All right. So question 4, if you're all looking at page 19, the sample record of response. So if you look at, in this example, for the correct letter sounds, they had 27 out of 31. You'll notice the only sounds that they missed were the Z in zips, the A in cadge, the E in tem, and the O in hawks. So that's why they have 27 out of 31. And then for whole words read, they got 9 points. So here's how they got the 9 points. So for wag, they got 2 points because they just said wag. For rot, they did not get a point because they just said the sounds. They didn't actually blend the word. For cub, it's just like wag. They just said it. They got the 2 points. For fed, same thing, 2 points. For zips, they blended it, but they they might have said sips or kips or something else, so they didn't get a point for that. Kaj, they didn't blend the word, so they don't get any points for that. Yiv, they got the 2 points because they blended it without having to sound it out. Tem, it looks like they did the same thing where they sounded it out, but then they did blend it, but then it sounds like they had the E wrong, so maybe they said Tim instead. Hawks, again, they just said it right away, but they might have said hex or hacks or something else. And then Lun, they get 1 point because they did get all the sounds and they blended once, so they did get 1 point for that.
They don't actually get more points for segmenting and then blending. That's only 1 point. If they read the word correctly, they get 2 points. So when they say wag, that's worth 2 points. And if they say lun, that's only worth 1 point because they segmented the sounds first and then blended them together. So hopefully that answers Cindy's question.
And just kind of to reiterate, thank you so much, Liz, for stepping in on that. Just to kind of reiterate, so if we look at the whole words red points, so for wag, they got 2 points. For cub, 2 points. For fed, 2. For yiv, 2. And then for lun, they got 1. So that's where we have the 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 points in the whole words red. The reason they don't get points for whole words red for zips and tem and hawks is because they said one of the letters incorrectly.
So a couple more questions just to
Yep.
clarify. They do get all 3 points for the sound, even if they do read the whole word. So there's 2 separate sections that are scored. The first section is correct letter sounds, which is worth 31 points total. And then they get points for if they read the whole word,
Right.
or if they segment and then blend, which would be 20 points total. So hopefully that answers Donna's question and clarifies things for you, Brittany. You get all 3 points for the sounds, even if you read the whole word.
Correct. Any other questions on scoring for number 4 before we move on?
If they are going to get points for reading whole words, it should say that in the state standards.
Okay. Anything else? All right, let's move on to number 5. Question 5 is emergent reading. And so this one you'll notice, this is where those books come in. So this is what they look like, those 3 books. We have one that's on a dog, one that's about things in the grass, and then this one that's on Ned the cat. So again, if you're printing these, if you print double-sided in the test administration manual, pages 58 to 63, that will, and make sure when you're printing them that you print it so that the number 2 is on the back. So we tried to, if you'll actually notice on those pages, we tried to set it up so that it will actually print correctly. So just kind of a heads up on that. It's okay if you don't have color printing. I don't want you to worry about that or stress about that. It's fine if they're in black and white. That won't affect the student's comprehension of reading. So if the student at any time pauses for more than 3 seconds, then provide them with the word and have them keep reading. If a student makes the same error multiple times, mark it wrong each time. So, for example, in the first book, the word dog is on every single page. If they say dog wrong every time, then it is marked wrong every single time. So what you'll do is you'll place this text in front of the student and say, read this story out loud. I will ask you about it when you are done reading. So then they'll read through the story. After the student reads the story, then you remove the text and ask the student the following questions. What is the story about? And what can the dog do? After that, you proceed to the next text. Then the student would need to read the first text with 3 or fewer errors and answer at least one of the comprehension questions correctly. If they are unable to accomplish that, then you discontinue text 2 and 3, and you would just move on to the next question. And so you wouldn't have to read text 2 and 3. Text 2, that's the one with the grass. So you would place that text in front of the student. Now read this story out loud. I will ask you about it when you are done. After the student reads the story again, you remove the text and ask the following questions. What is the story about? What can you find in the grass? And again, there are requirements to proceed to text 3. So if the student reads text 2 with 3 or fewer errors and answers at least one of the comprehension questions correctly, then they can move on to number 3. If those aren't accomplished, then discontinue and they won't read text number 3. Text 3 you would place in front of the student and follow the same protocol. As far as scoring goes, they are scored in two different areas. One is on reading errors and one is reading comprehension. So just, this is a little bit different than you might be used to, so really pay close attention to the scoring. It is a little different on this. So for reading errors, you're marking each text. If they have no errors while reading the text, then they get 4 points, no matter which text it is. So 4 points if there are no errors. 3 points if they have 1 error, 2 points if there are 2 to 3 errors when they were reading, 1 point if they have 4 to 5 errors, and then 0 points if they have more than 5 errors. The reading comprehension piece is worth 6 points. You get 2 points if they answer both questions correctly for each text, 1 point if they answer one of the two correctly, and 0 points if they don't answer any of the questions correctly. And then there are accommodating instructions for those who need it below on page 21, and then you'll notice on page 22 it has the materials which we just talked about and the sample record of response and scoring. Now, I'm going to stop there only because for questions 6 and 7, I just want to be very, very clear that on 6 and 7, those are, and 6 we haven't gone through, and 7 we haven't gone through yet, but those are the ones that are actually small group administration. So what you would do is probably just put like a little tab or something in here to remind yourself that when you're testing, that after you go to question number 5, you would skip 6 and 7 in the test administration manual and go straight to 8. So I'll say that again. When you're giving the assessment, you're going to give the entire individual section on its own without doing 6 and 7 because those are small group administration done at a different time. So you'll do questions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you'll do 8 through, I believe the last one's 13. And then skipping 6 and 7 because those are the ones that are small group administration, and they will be done at a different time in a small group setting. So when thinking about that, it's helpful if you just put like a little paper clip in and a note that maybe you've already done the small group section with students, or maybe you're going to do it later, like the next day with students. However you have that set up that works best for your schedule. So we are going to go through 6 and 7 now, just because I'm not actually giving the assessment to a student. But before we move on, any questions about this so far?
On question number 4.
Oh, yep. Sure.
Stacy says that if they sound out the word incorrectly, but they blend the word correctly using the incorrect sound, do they get the full point or no points for blending?
Wait, can you say that one more time? I'm sorry, I don't think I was...
They sound out the word incorrectly.
Okay, they sounded out incorrectly.
Say the word is bag, and instead they say big.
Okay.
So they go big. So they use the incorrect middle sounds, but they blended it correctly with the incorrect sound. They get no points for blending because it has to be the correct word.
Yes.
I think if that's not clear, Stacy, just chat box.
Yep. Stacy, let us know if we are misunderstanding that question because we certainly want to answer it as clearly as we can. I had to
talk through that one out loud because I wasn't entirely sure if I was answering the question that you were asking. So if not, just let us know and we'll readdress that again.
Yes. Thank you. That's a great question. All right. Any other ones that you guys are seeing before we move on to number 6? Okay. Great. Number 6, encoding. So this is the one that just, kind of to give you a little reminder that this is the small group administration. So this is the one where you're going to need the dividers. So students aren't, of course, looking at each other's work and cheating. So you will distribute lined paper of your choice for this one. So yay, choice, whatever amazing lined paper you want. If you don't have any handy and you want to just use the back of the one that's required for question 7, that would be absolutely fine if you want to do that on a separate piece of paper. So you'll distribute lined paper of your choice, a pencil, and a privacy divider each student, and then you will write, you will say, write the words I say on the lines, try and write all the sounds you hear. And of course, remember to say the words at a normal talking rate. I know sometimes as teachers, I've been in rooms where we give spelling tests and they're saying them very slowly, and we just need to say them at a normal talking rate. So not too fast and not too slow, just at a normal talking rate. So you would say, the first word is pan. Say it with me, pan. We cook food in a pan. Write the word pan on the first line and give them time to write. You'd move on to word number 2, word number 3. Then you will say, now you write a sentence. Now you will write a sentence. Write the sentence I say on the next line. The sentence is, Jim is wet. Say it with me. Jim is wet. Write the sentence, Jim is wet, on the next line. You can repeat the sentence as many times as needed, but remember, say the sentence in a normal talking voice. Normal talking rate. For scoring, they get 1 point for each sound spelled correctly. That's worth 17 points total. 1 point for each whole word spelled correctly, which is out of 6. And then 1 point for a capital letter at the beginning of the sentence in the word gym. Again, we have accommodated instructions. You'll notice those 4 bullets below. And then on the back, of course, on page 25, we have the actual materials that you'll be needing and a sample record of response. Question number 7. Again, this one is administered small group. So remember 6, the one we just talked about, and number 7, the one that's on writing. Those are administered in small group at a different time. They're not during the individual administration time. You'll notice it's small group administration, and then it talks about maximum time allotted for each group is 15 minutes. So what that means is once you've read through everything and you've done everything, the students don't ever get more than 15 minutes to write. So the 15 minutes is not you reading it and writing. The 15 minutes is just for the writing. So just want to be really clear on that. That's what those 15 minutes are for. So you'll be using the pages in the student materials booklet. They're page 7, or question 7. So on one side, the kids will be looking at the picture of the animal. On the other side, the teacher will be reading the actual instructions. So just to be clear on that, the student sees the actual picture of the animal and the teacher is reading on the side. So you can kind of set it up. I hope you can see this, otherwise I feel really silly acting this out. So you would just set it on the table, and so that you could be seeing one side and the student sees the other side, just like a flip book, so you could flip to the next animal easily. So when doing this, you would say, I'm going to read you some interesting information about animals. Listen carefully. And then you'd actually start in. So that's where the actual reading is on the back, and you'll flip through. You would read. Once you're done reading that one, you'd flip. Look at the next animal, flip, the bat, the dog, and then eventually you get to this picture of all 4 animals on it, and that's that last section that you'd be reading. So you'll notice it says, now that we have read about animal bodies, your job is to choose an animal, a fish, a bird, a bat, or a dog, and you can actually point to them, a fish, a bird, a bat, and a dog, and write about its body. I am going to read the text one more time so that you can think about what you might want to include in your writing. And then I would flip all the way back to that first one, the fish. So you might want to put a little tab in there or a paper clip to help you remember where that first one is. So you can flip back and you're reading through the story again. So again, you're flipping, you're reading, the teacher's reading the back, the student's looking at the actual pictures. And then once you get to that same 4 section again, then you would say, now it is time to write about the animal you choose, a fish, a bird, a bat, or a dog. You would hand out the writing paper and the pencils and the dividers at this time. Make sure to include many details about the animal's body in your writing and drawing. Remember to use a capital letter at the beginning of each sentence and leave spaces between the words. Remember to write before you draw. You may begin. As students work, the teachers may repeat as necessary. Remember to write and draw about the animal you chose and include details about that animal's body. If a student starts drawing first, you can prompt only once by saying, remember, you need to write first, then you can draw. You'll also notice on page 27, if you're following along with me in the teacher administration manual, or test administration manual, teachers should not provide a word bank. So we are not providing in a word bank any words. If a student asks for help, you can say, do the best you can. We are also not allowing for spelling words for students or using any kind of sentence starter or stem. So again, do not provide a word bank and do not spell words or use sentence starters or stems for students. When the student indicates that he or she is finished, you can use the one-time prompt, looks good, can you add any more details? Once a student has done their best attempt, a teacher can ask the student to tell them what they wrote and record the student's response to clarify the writing if needed. Remember, this question shall only take up to 15 minutes, meaning that the students only get 15 minutes to actually do the written portion. So once you've handed out the paper, you've read all the directions, then you start the 15 minutes. They have 15 minutes to get the writing complete. Excuse me. When you are scoring, you'll notice that there are 3 sections to the scoring piece. We have topics and details, and you'll notice that it actually states right here, details may include ideas from their background knowledge. So it is okay if they are including information about a dog from their background knowledge. That's completely fine. 4 points, the response includes one of the animals from the text and at least 3 details about the animal chosen, and all of the ideas are connected to the animal chosen, and then it goes down from there. For capitalization, we use 2 points for a capital letter for the first word in the sentence. 1 point is if they're using inconsistent capitals, which you see often, and then 0 points if there's no use of capitals. And then for production, it's 5 points if the response is in writing and includes a drawing that matches their writing. 4 points, the student response is in writing but does not include a drawing that supports their writing. 3 points if the student uses a combination of dictation and writing or drawing. So that dictation is in that piece above where I talked about that the teacher can ask them to clarify what they wrote and dictate that. That's where that dictation piece comes in if that's needed. 2 points. Student draws or dictates their response to the teacher and as it relates to one of the animals from the text. 1 point, the student draws or dictates their responses to the teacher, however it doesn't relate to one of the animals from the text, and then of course no points if they don't have a response. And then there is a note at the bottom just above that purple accommodated instructions bar that says note spelling is not scored. So we are scoring spelling on question number 6. Question number 7, we are not including spelling as a scoreable piece. So it's just those 3 scoring pieces: topic and details, capitalization, and production. Then we also have accommodated instructions at the bottom of page 27, and they move on to page 28, and then the sample record of response on the back and the materials sheet. Do we have some questions?
So we're going to address the questions. Great. The one for the small group administration for question 6 and 7 has come up a couple times.
Oh, okay.
People want to know if you can administer it individually or can you do it in whole group instead. For standardization purposes, question number 6 and 7 have to be administered in small group. The definition of small group?
Usually it's no more than 6.
Yeah, 4 to 6 students, whatever your small group normally consists of
in your classroom.
And when you talk about question number 6, spelled correctly does mean that the word is spelled correctly because it is a CVC word, so phonetic spelling for that would be the correct standard spelling. Another question we asked is what can we have on the wall in our classroom when we are testing in small groups? So if you have a word wall up there, can you leave it up or is that something that you have to take down?
We aren't requiring you to take down anything in your rooms at this time. Certainly be mindful that this is a standardized assessment, and so you shouldn't be like, if you don't know, pointing to it. So please don't be doing that. That's not appropriate. That is against our testing ethics policy. So if you are having a situation where you do have something up in your wall, just please don't refer to it. If you feel better covering it up, that's up to you, but we're not going to make you take it down the last 4 weeks of school.
And someone asked on number 6 if they write the letters incorrectly, such as a reversal. Reversals are acceptable as long as the letter is formed correctly. So if it's a question on letter formation, if it's not formed correctly, then that wouldn't count as a correct letter. But if it's just reversed, then that's fine.
Yep.
And then
Can you tell them to record?
That's a great question.
Can we tell them to record 3 details on question number 7? For standardization purposes, please make sure that you are following the testing administration manual.
Yes.
So whatever is written in bold in the manual is what you say out loud. And then there are those specific prompts if things come up in testing.
Yeah, great question again. So just want to really reiterate that standardization is key. We do have to be reading exactly what's in bold. We cannot add anything or take anything away from that. That is how it is meant to be given for standardization purposes.
And the 15 minutes is the all-inclusive time for writing and drawing. So once you read the story and give all the instructions, the student has 15 minutes to work.
Yep.
Can the 3 ideas be in 1 sentence or do they have to be in 3 sentences?
It's however the student writes it.
And if the student wants to dictate to the teacher can write what the student said on their writing, and that is in scoring for topic, or for production.
Yep.
And then Hannah, did you get the reversals on question 6? If the letter is reversed, they're acceptable. Okay, and then are we okay to assess the whole class? We don't have support to do small groups.
So great question again. So just another reminder out there that if the administration tab or little piece here, the group for administration, if it says individual, it has to be done individual. If it says small group, it has to be small group. None of these can be done whole group. Absolutely none. For standardization, it has to be in small group if it says small group. It has to be individual if it says individual. Just want to make that very clear. Is that the last question?
I do believe so. I think we covered them all. Just to make sure I'm clear, if you have a word wall up that has been there all year. Yes, if your word wall is up and it has been down, or it has been up all year, then you're free to leave it up as long as you don't remind them, hey, look over there at the word wall.
Just don't reference those materials.
And then somebody says, when we take down the word wall, are we testing spelling or reading?
We don't have to take down the word wall. So, all right, so numeracy overview. So we are moving on to numeracy unless there are any more lingering literacy questions. And remembering that those individual testing pieces, when you're doing the individual piece, you test questions 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then you go from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's the entire individual piece. Oh, question.
Real quick before we move on. Someone says that if we do individual testing, if they are making up a small group question.
Say that one more time.
So if they're making up a small group question and they had a student that was absent, can they do individual testing, or
if they just have one student to give it?
That's my understanding.
Absolutely, that's fine. If you only have one more kid to give it, then you have to give it. It might be better if you have maybe another kindergarten classroom next to you where you're making up with another couple students, and maybe they can all do it together as a small group to save time and hit that standardization, but it is best done in a small group setting. Good question. Is that the last one? Okay, great. Okay, so again, just want to reiterate that those items 6 and 7 are the ones that have to be done in small group. They cannot be done in whole group or individually. They have to be done in small group. Just noting that that will be done at a separate time from the rest of the questions. So the individual questions are questions 1 through 5 and 8 through 13. And so when you're giving the individual portion of the test, that 20-minute setting is question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So just to be really clear on that, that all has to be done at the same time in the same sitting. And then 6 and 7 are the ones done at a different time in a small group setting. So the numeracy overview, question number 8 is oral counting. And we aren't making you count all the way to 100 and listen to that, although it's super fun. We're going to go ahead and we made that a little bit better for you. Question number 9 is counting objects. Question 10 is identify and compare numerals. 11 is decompose numbers. 12 is compose and decompose teen numbers, so it's slightly different than 11. And then 13 is addition and subtraction word problems. So let's move right in. So question 8 actually begins on page 30 and continues on page 31. You'll notice this is again group individual administration. Instructions read as start counting at 12 and count by ones until I tell you to stop. And you listen to them, and when they hit 21, you tell them to stop. Record any errors. Now start counting at 83 and count by ones until I tell you to stop. And again, you're listening, and once they hit 100, you can tell them to stop. Now, kids might do some funky things. When we tested this on several students, some of them did some interesting things. So then afterwards, we did include some of these pieces. You'll notice right after the directions, we have several different suggestions or prompts that you can use. So the first one is, if the student skip counts, say, count by ones. If the student does not count out loud, say, count out loud. If the student starts at 1, repeat the directions. Remind them, start counting at 12, count by ones. If the student starts at 12 and counts backwards, say, start at 12 and count forward. If after giving one of the corrective prompts and the student still cannot complete the task, then say stop and continue to the next part. The scoring is very similar to the beginning of the year when we were doing the entry assessment. So if you actually, I think it's actually easier to look at page 31 with the sample record of response. So this student counted 12, 13, and then they might have said 13 again. I'm sure you've all heard kids count that way. So they might have said 12, 13, 13, 15. So they had an error at 14, so they only get 2 points for that part because they only counted 12 and 13 correctly in order before making an error. And then for 83, it looks like they didn't make an error until 94, so they're counted, those 11 numbers, 83 to 93 are counted consecutively without any errors and correctly. So that's where the 11 and the 2 on top gets the 13 points out of 28, so in case you're wondering about that. And then I think we'll move on to number 9. So question number 9, counting objects. So you will display the student material sheet that looks like this. So it's in the back of your test administration manual, pages 67 and then 68. I just put them in a sheet protector so that you can use marker to do it, so you don't have to make all the copies. If you want to make copies of these individually to have with every student, that's up to you. It's your choice. I just didn't want to make all those copies. So I put it in here. So you will be displaying this sheet and providing the student with a blank piece of paper and a pencil. The student material sheet may also be copied, like I said, and put in a sheet protector to use with a marker. Count the circles. Allow the students count. Tell me how many circles there are. Allow them to respond. Now write that number, and they can just write it on here. That's fine, and you can erase it later. Allow the student to write the number. And then you would display the student material sheet with 9 triangles. So I just put it on the back. Count the triangles. Tell me how many there are, and now write that number. If the student does not count out loud, be sure to say count out loud. Otherwise, we don't know if they're using one-to-one correspondence or just guessing. So we tried to make the directions a little clearer than we did at the beginning of the year, because we know that was a little bit tricky for some people. So there are 2 points if the student counts the number of objects correctly and uses one-to-one correspondence. 1 point if the student counts the number of objects correctly without using one-to-one correspondence, or the student uses one-to-one correspondence with errors in counting. So they only get 1 point for that. And then, of course, 0 if they're unable to count the number of objects correctly nor use one-to-one correspondence. The cardinality is 1 point. The student correctly tells you how many there are without recounting. So if they're counting the circles, which, by the way, there are 16, and let's say they say 15, to get the 1 point for cardinality, if they counted 15, then they have to say 15, because that is how many they counted. And then writing the numeral, the student writes a number that corresponds, again, with their response of tell me how many there are. So again, if they counted 15, they say there are 15, they should write 15. Now we're hoping they do 16, obviously, because that's the right answer, but it would be really strange if they counted 15 and then wrote 16. That wouldn't make any sense. So, and you'll notice there is a little note on page 33 underneath the scoring that says, the student may or may not point to objects in the images as they count. Reversals are accepted. So, for example, if they write the 9 backwards. Transposals are not. So that's if they wrote 61 instead of 16. So I'll just reiterate that again. It's okay if they have a reversal, like if they write the number 9 backwards. It is not okay, and it is not accepted as a correct response if they write 61 instead of 16. So just to be clear on that. There are accommodated instructions, 4 bullet points there, and then you have the materials and the sample record of response down at the bottom as well. Question 10. Any questions before I move on to 10, ladies?
There is a question.
Oh, great.
On question number 8, if they make a mistake, can
great.
we repeat the last number they said correctly as a prompt?
No. Unfortunately, you cannot. That's a great question. Was your microphone on? I just want to make sure everyone heard you.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So hopefully you heard Liz then, but no, because it is not in the standardization of an allowable prompt, and so no, that cannot be done. Thank you for asking. That's a great question.
And then I answered some specific ones about can you give them a pencil to cross off as they count. That's acceptable if you want to copy the paper and give the student a paper and a pencil instead of using the sheet protector and a pen. Someone asked if you can give the test and the target language for dual immersion, and the test is designed to be given in English for standardization purposes. So hopefully those are all the questions so far. If not...
Yep, and I can reiterate that too, is just like the entry assessment, it is meant to be given in the language of instruction, which is English, and so just a reminder on that, that the assessment is needed to be given in English only. So question number 9... we already talked about. So question 10, which starts on page 34 and goes to page 35. This one you'll actually need the student sheets. So if you display page 15 in the student material sheet for question 10, hopefully you can all see that. So you'd point to the first set of numbers 8 and 3, and you would say, tell me the names of these numbers. Allow for the students to respond. Are these numbers equal? Allow for them to respond. And which number is greater? Allow for the students to respond. Now, when the student responds, you'll notice at the very bottom it says the student may say the name number or point. So when you ask which number is greater, they can just point to the 8 to say 8 is greater than 3, or they could just say 8. Either one is an acceptable response, so just so you are aware of that. Point to 6 and 6. So you're pointing to those and saying, tell me the names of these numbers. Allow for the response, are these numbers equal? And then you move on to 5 and 2 and so on. So this one actually went really fast and was actually really fun, I felt, to test on. I don't know how you guys felt when you did it, but I thought it was really fun. And then for scoring, reading the numerals, there's 1 point for identifying each number correctly, 9 points total. And then comparing numbers, it's 1 point for identifying if the numbers are equal or not, which is a total of 5 points. And then 1 point for correctly identifying the number that is greater or less than, depending on which it asks you, because you'll notice some of them say which number is greater and some of the questions ask which number is less. And that's a total of 4 points. And then you'll notice the accommodated instructions on page 35, as well as the materials and the sample record of response.
So for question number 10, if they respond in their immersion language, can you accept that? Because their language of instruction for math is the foreign language.
That's a great question. Unfortunately, no, it does have to be in English. The response needs to be in English. Thank you for asking. That's such a great question. Is that the only one on 10?
So far.
Great. Okay. 11, decomposing numbers. So for math, you'll notice it says display the student material sheet for question number 11, and that you might use a master copy with a sheet protector or a whiteboard. Excuse me. For this, it looks like this. It's on page 69 of your TAM. If you want to make individual questions, one moment, there's a question.
Go ahead. Can they prompt
in English? If they give the answer in Spanish, can they prompt?
Oh. Let me think about that one. I'm going to think on it. You guys go ahead and write that down and let me know. And then if you wanted to just that would be great. So we're going to think on that for a second. That's an awesome question. So continuing on with number 11. So decomposing numbers. Again, this is the sheet that you're looking at for question number 11. You'll notice it says it up here in case you get any of them mixed up, which is kind of helpful. It's on page 69 of your test administration manual. And when you're looking at that one, you're displaying it. Again, if you want to make all the copies, that's fine. Or if you just want to do this and erase it between students, that's fine as well. You'll also need to provide the students with 5 identical counters. So if that's 5 chips that are all purple, 5 chips that are all green, great, whatever works best for you. Here are 5 counters. Separate the 5 counters into 2 groups. Allow them time to do that. Write the number on the equation to show how you made the 5. So that's where they're doing it on this first one right here. And then allow the student time to record the equation. Now show a different way to make 5 and write the numbers in the equation to show how you made 5. So that's, the other one is for that. There's a discontinue rule. If the student is unable to decompose 5, move on and don't ask them to do 8. And then of course for the next part, for 8, provide the students with 8 identical counters instead of 5. And then you'll go through the same questions. Please make a note, because I actually had this with one of the students I was testing. If the student makes more than 2 groups, like I had a student make 3 groups out of the 8 chips instead of just making the 2, remind them that they need to make only 2 groups. So if they're making more than the 2 groups, remind them that they need to make 2. They get 1 point for each decomposition of objects, and then 1 point for the written equation. So 1 point for actually doing it, and 1 point for the actual written response. Just a quick note though, the equations must match the decomposition with the objects in order to receive the full points. So just keeping that in mind as well. There are accommodated instructions, and then the materials and sample records of response are on page 37. Questions, it looks like.
Lots of questions.
Oh, good.
So can they use red and yellow chips?
So great question. If they use red and yellow chips, it's fine. Just make sure that they're all up the same side is up, so they're all red or all yellow, and that they don't flip them during the task because it might confuse them.
Can they cover up the other questions while they are being tested on one question?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, no, because of the standardization of the test, it's not required or allowed. If we find out from test scores that that's a requirement, we can always change it later. But we didn't have any issues when we were testing students when we did it last month or whenever that was. I don't know. It seemed like a long time ago. It probably wasn't that long ago. Whenever we tested with students, we didn't have any issues with that as well. Any other questions?
So what if they do 2 plus 3, and then the next one is 3 plus 2? Does that count as 2 ways or just 1?
Well, Whitney, do you want to take that since you're our math guru in the room?
Typically when we have the different ways, like 2 plus 3 and 3 plus 2, that wouldn't necessarily be considered a different way. Like it would be 1 and 4 and 2 and 3 would be the two
another
different
option.
ways.
Okay. Thanks. Did everyone hear Whitney? I don't think she. Oh, do you have a microphone by you? Oh, yeah, you do. Okay. So if you didn't hear it, please type in the chat box so that we are aware of that. That's nope. Okay. We'll have her pull a microphone in.
So going back to that math question, that if 2 plus 3 and 3 plus 2 are two different groups or two different ways, that would be one way because it's the same groupings. And so it doesn't change the way the students are counting. So the two groups we would be looking for is a group of 2 and 3 and then a group of 1 and 4.
All right. And Liz, do you want to go ahead and respond to that last piece? Or the question on English and Spanish?
5 and 0 is okay. Sarah just asked if they could do 5 and 0. So any combination as long as it's not repeating. And then somebody expressed the concern about the colored counters. Their kids have been taught to do it with the red and yellow counters and that keeping one color up defeats the point. So
say that again.
The two colored counters, they've been taught to do it with the red and yellow and to flip them over. So keeping them up one color up defeats the point. So, and then
Can you prompt to use
for the prompting on the immersion language, sorry.
Yep.
For the prompting on the immersion language, in the beginning of the test administration, it says that
so before you begin the actual assessment and the actual questions.
that is the only part that can be, sorry, time out. Let me focus my thoughts. I'm trying to look in too many different places right now.
I got it. So she's looking, while she's looking, so they can be told to respond in English before the actual assessment is given. So before you start any of the actual questions, you can let them know in Spanish this test is given in English and that you need to respond in English before it even begins, but not during the actual assessment. So does that help, I hope, clarify that? So it's just like the beginning of the year where you could tell the student it's going to be given in English, you need to respond in English. And so it is those same pieces as our other assessment. So I hope that's clear. More math questions. All right, let's keep going with math questions.
Can you prompt them to use different numbers? Can we prompt to tell kids to do another way if they did 2 plus 3 and 3 plus 2? And then someone expresses a concern that, so we are saying that there are not 6 ways to decompose the number 5.
And I will defer to Whitney. Oh, okay. So,
but like if you look at the example, it was asking for those two separate ones.
Okay. So in case you're unable to hear Whitney, she's saying that on the standard alignment, you'll notice at the top of page 36 through the standard alignment, and this is actually directly from the core, it says they're decomposing numbers, whatever, decomposition by a drawing or an equation. An example is 5 equals 2 plus 3 and 5 equals 4 plus 1. So it does have to be those separate pieces. Was that it, or?
So you're saying there's only 3 ways to decompose the number 5. If these two and these two and these two are essentially the same.
That's my understanding of it. We can have Shannon
Well,
respond to it.
We'll get some clarification on that and we'll get back to you guys, okay?
Okay. You want to?
And there is only the prompts that are in the teacher's administration manual in bold that you are allowed to prompt the students with.
Yep. All right. Is that all of them? Did we get?
To clarify, we can only use one color counters.
Yep. That's what the standardized directions say. So yes, absolutely. So 11, compose and decompose teen numbers. So this one is display the student material sheet for question 12, which again, you can make all the copies that you would like if you want one for each student, or you can just put them in the sheet protectors as I have. It looks like this. So you'll show the number so you'll say, show the number 13 as 10 ones and some more ones by drawing circles in these 10 frames. And allow for the student's response. Finish the equation to show 13 as 10 ones and some more ones, and allow for them to respond and record. There is a discontinue rule. If the student is unable to decompose 13, then you just move on to the last question, and you wouldn't actually do 18. And 18 is the same instructions. And then it notes before scoring, if a student writes an equation that does not include 10 ones and some more ones, so if they wrote, for 13, if they wrote 6 and 7, or 6 plus 7, or 9 plus 9, go ahead and say only once for each number. Write the equation as 10 ones and some more ones. So it has to be 10 and the other number. So they get 1 point for correctly modeling the number with a 10 frame. And that's the actual picture piece. And then 1 point for correctly writing the equation as the score 10 plus whatever. So that's the other 2 points. Then we have the accommodated instructions at the bottom of 38 and the materials in the sample record of response on page 39. Looks like that. All right. Any questions on questions 11 and 12 before we move on to 13? Or did you guys already respond to those?
Nothing's come up in the chat box yet.
Okay, great. Question 13, addition and subtraction word problems. You'll notice that there aren't any materials that you need to put in anything for this one. It's just a blank sheet of paper, a pencil, and some counters that are all the same color again. I'm going to give you some word problems to solve. Use your fingers, objects, drawings, or equations, so they have all of those options, to show how you solve the problem. And then you're providing them with those pieces. Then you actually read through the problems. The first one is Carla has 3 big apples and 4 small apples. How many apples does Carla have? You'll notice it says allow the student to solve the problem, and you can repeat the problem as necessary. And that's the same instruction for each of the 3 word problems. And then if the student just states an answer, then ask them to show you how they know with their fingers, objects, drawings, or an equation to represent their thinking, so we know that they're not just guessing. And then if the student does not begin to solve the problem, you say, can you solve this problem? And repeat the problem as necessary. So you'd say, can you solve this problem? Carla has 3 big apples and 4 small apples. How many apples does Carla have? There's also a discontinue rule. If the student does not attempt to solve the problem after 3 prompts, record a score of 0 and proceed to the next word problem. For scoring, there's 3 points for each representation created using the rubric. The rubric is actually on the top of page 41. We couldn't fit it on 40, so sorry about that. So again, that rubric is on the top of page 41. And that's for the 3 points for each representation, a total of 9, and then 1 point for each correct answer. So you'll notice they have 0 points if they do not attempt, 1 point if it's an inaccurate one, 2 points if it's partially accurate, and then 3 points if it's an accurate representation. And just as a reminder, it says underneath there, representations may include a verbal response using fingers, using manipulatives, drawing, writing numerals, or writing an equation. So all of those are the options. And then we have the accommodated instructions and the materials and sample record of response. Any questions on that piece?
We have a clarification.
Oh, we have a clarification.
There
Go
was
ahead,
a
Liz.
question on the addition and subtraction word problems that says, can you pause between the 2 sentences so they can show with counters?
On question 13, is that what
Yeah,
you're
on the
asking?
word problems. Sorry, yes, so can you pause between the sentences? So can you say, Carla has 3 big apples and 4 small apples, and then pause before you read the second sentence so they can model? I don't think it necessarily allows for pausing in between, but you can repeat the question as necessary.
You can repeat it as many times as necessary, so no, you cannot pause in between. It is to be read the way it is written. Great question. That's a good one.
And then clarification for question number 11, the decomposition of numbers. The
Yes.
commutative property would make the answers 2 plus 3 or 3 plus 2 acceptable for kindergarten. So
Okay.
if they do 1 plus
Great.
4 and then 4 plus 1, those are 2 different ways to show the decomposition of the number 5 for kindergarten. So those answers are acceptable.
Perfect.
So there are 6 correct ways to decompose the number 5 for kindergarten.
Wonderful. All right. Any questions on 13? Nope. Not any new ones. Okay. Then if you're following along in your test administration manual, you'll notice when the profile is complete that the administrator is to give the social emotional skills observation inventory, which is on pages 44 and 45. You'll notice that we have new standards because obviously the entry was aligned with pre-K standards and this one is aligned with kindergarten standards. So we do have that alignment. The instructions, I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to call ourselves out right now. That is wrong. Go ahead and cross out the instructions on the social emotional skills observational inventory. That was for the beginning of year. The new instructions should be based off of the students' behaviors within the testing window, which is the last 4 weeks of kindergarten. So you're basing your responses to these questions on the last 4 weeks of kindergarten and their behavior during that time, not just during the testing time. So I hope that helps clear that up. All right, so in the data gateway, I'm going to have to swap out for a moment. Any questions before we move on to the very exciting data portion? Oh, okay. All right. All right, so hopefully you are all seeing my screen. Oh. Or not. Oh my. Let me try that again. Okay, we're back. So you'll notice so in the data gateway it will look very different from the beginning of the year. So our computer programmers have been so wonderful to work with, and I do want to caveat this with what I am showing you is not done. It is not complete. It has many mistakes. We are aware of all of them. Actually, some of them have already been fixed, but please know that we wanted to get at least a version out to you so you could see what it looked like. Oh boy. Okay, let's hope it stays. So this is a similar piece to what it will look like. Again, this is something you could do during testing so that you don't necessarily have to actually score paper pencil. If you feel more comfortable with that, that's 100% okay, and that you can always do that like you did at the beginning. Oh boy. I don't know why it keeps switching over. Okay, I'll try to be a little bit quicker. Oh, not quick enough. So when you're looking through these, you'll notice the questions are down below, so you'd be going through each question. So if we click on question 2, for example, if a student gets it wrong, you would just be clicking on their incorrect answers, and now when it's actually working correctly and up and running, because this is just a quick mock-up so that you could sort of see what it looks like, it would actually show you that they get a score of 4 here because they got 2 wrong. So just so you are aware of that, it will automatically calculate those points. If you hit the instructions box, it will drop down so you have the instructions here, so you don't necessarily have to have your test administration manual with you. It also has the scoring in a drop-down box and the accommodated instructions. So just know that those are all there. It's very similar if you were using MClass or Amplify on Dibbles. It's fairly similar to that, so it might not be that new. And then you'd go on to the next question. Oh, well, because it's not up and running, it can't do that for me. But if you look at, here's an example of question number 3. So again, you would click on their errors and it will calculate it automatically once it's up and running. And again, we have the instructions and so on. Oh boy, that's just
So a difference in the data gateway on the exit versus what it looked like on the entry. On the entry, you were marking the things that they got correct. So that is no longer the case. On the exit, you're going to click on something if it's incorrect and it'll mark it red. So just so you know, there is that little bit of a difference between how you scored for the entry and how you scored for the exit. But this is much more user-friendly, and it's modeled just like the teacher administration manual for ease of scoring. There is a specific browser that you access it through. It's the Data Gateway. If you look in the beginning of your teacher administration manual on page 9, it's the https datagateway.schools.utah.gov website. You can do data entry on any device that you can access the Data Gateway website that Sarah has up on the screen right now.
Yep. So hopefully that makes you very excited because it's going to be so much better. I like to imagine that you're all cheering behind your computer right now.
Yay!
If your sound was on, but please don't turn it on. I'm just imagining that it's there.
We'll cheer for you. It's pretty awesome.
Hopefully you're very excited about that. I know the group that we trained last week was very excited to see that it would be so much better than the last time and beginning of year. And we do apologize, and we are so grateful that you continued on through that with us because that was a rough go. Liz, question?
If we have students who are absent the week of our testing, are we required to make that up?
Yes. So all kids do need to be tested on the KEEP assessment. So if they are absent, you need to test them at a later date if they're gone the one day that you're choosing to do this. Yep. Great question.
Then do they have to access the Data Gateway through a specific browser? Someone mentioned that last time it was only available through Google Chrome.
I know it works best through Google Chrome, and I know it does not work through Internet Explorer. So do not use Internet Explorer, and Chrome is what works best with it. Any other ones?
And then no, you do not report the social emotional questions on the data gateway because those are optional.
Well, they're not optional questions.
They're not optional questions. You give the questions, but you don't score them. Sorry, they're not optional. They're not scored items.
Well, they're scored, but we don't collect the data.
In the data gateway.
So they are scored. You do have to do the social emotional questions. It's just that we don't collect that data in the data gateway. So who can enter the data? This is a local decision. So the kindergarten teachers will automatically be able to and have access. However, you can assign other personnel at your district or charter school. If your assessment director, that's who you should go to, your assessment director, is wanting someone else to have access, and they need to give them the assessment school user role. So that's what this is. So if you're wanting other personnel, again, instead of the kindergarten teachers to actually put the information into Data Gateway, then you need to contact your district or charter assessment director, and then they can assign that person an assessment school user role to actually enter that data. Questions?
How can I create an account for Data Gateway? There is, again, on page 9, registering for the Data Gateway gives you instructions on that. There's a lot more questions coming through right here.
Oh, okay. So we'll wait. It looks like there's a bunch of questions coming through. We'll wait so we can answer those.
When will the Keep Exit be available on the Data Gateway so we can look at it? As soon as the programmers can get it up and running. It's still in the works, but it should be well before your testing window opens.
Well, I don't know. Because their testing window is only the last 4 weeks of school, we probably won't open it sooner just because we don't want people to test inappropriately. But
it looks just like the teacher.
It looks exactly like that, but without all the errors.
Will we report social emotional data anywhere?
No, that is just something for you to keep at your local level. It is not something that we collect as a state level. Your district or charter may request you to enter it somewhere else. We just know that as a state, we do not collect it on the Data Gateway.
Can we give students breaks between questions during testing?
So, no. So, questions 6 and 7 are meant to be done in your small group setting. Questions 1 through 5 and 8 through 13 have to be done in one sitting without a break. So, just so you are aware of that. If their IEP has other, pieces included, that's a completely separate, that would be based on the IEP team and the already written IEP.
That's the question that just came up. What if they have
an
IEP?
Great. Okay. Is that it then?
Will there be a practice class in Data Gateway?
No.
I'm assuming what she does. If you said that we can test the kids 4 weeks before the end of the school year, will we be able to get into the Data Gateway and put in data as we test?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And then I think that was it. If I missed a question, just type it in. The chat box got really busy there for a second.
Yes, it did. All right. For exit reporting, so there won't be any reports until fall of 2018 because, of course, we want to make them better. And, of course, the scaled scores won't be set until this summer. So just so you are aware of that, just like we did for entry and the scaled scores weren't available and set until fall, just so you know that this will be the same thing, that there is a delayed amount of time for scaled scores. If you have any issues or questions, your first go-to is your district or charter assessment director. If you don't know who that is, I recommend making yourself a little note today to find out who that person is and find out what their email and phone number is. Your assessment director will be the ones who contacts us. So again, your first go-to for issues or questions is your district or charter assessment director. If they have questions, they will come to us. All right. And we'll answer your questions as they come about. Appendix A, which begins on page 48, is where it's the same accommodations that you'll see for other assessments. It's on pages 48 to 51. They're the typical accommodations that we find for all of our statewide assessments, and they are only allowable accommodations for students with disabilities. So just as a reminder, that's students that have a IEP or 504. It is not just for students who are struggling through a test. There are Braille and large print assessment materials available. Please contact Tracy Gooley. Her email is at the bottom of the screen right now. It's tracy.gooley at schools.utah.gov. And then, again, we already talked about this, but just as a reminder that if the student's native language is other than English, you can let them know before giving the assessment that this test will be given in English and you need to respond in English. But during the assessment, that cannot be discussed. And then the alternate assessment, and again, this is for students who are significantly, have significant cognitive disabilities and unable to access the regular KEEP assessment. So, and again, these are students who are taking those alternate kindergarten essential element standards. And again, it's determined by the IEP team, and those materials can be found on our website. Just as a reminder, since our website has changed, you may have noticed since July 1 that it's looked a little different. If you clicked on this tab, or if you click on the link, then you still have to click on the kindergarten tab to get there. If we give you the link to the kindergarten tab, it will still just take you to the assessment page, and you'll still have to click on the tab. And then future questions, I would really want to highlight Liz Williams, we have in the house today, and then Heather Gross. Those will be your two primaries. If you have math questions, it will be Whitney Barlow, who's also in the house today, and we're so grateful for them answering all of your questions on the chat box. So those are your three main contacts, Liz Williams, Heather Gross, and Whitney Barlow. But just as a reminder, your very first go-to is your district or charter assessment director, and they will reach out to us if they are get into some questions that maybe they are unsure of. So hopefully you've enjoyed your time today with us. If there are any further questions, please remain on. Yes, we are recording this, and we will send out the link to an array of people, so that they do have the link to watch it as often as needed. Or if you want to go back and check questions, that's fine as well. Liz, any questions?
There are a couple more questions coming through. Where do
Okay.
they record the social emotional data if they are not doing a paper hard copy? They're only going to input it into the data gateway as they are testing.
Great question. So the social emotional piece, again, you record that on a paper pencil, or some LEAs have it included in like Illuminate, or there are other pieces that they're included for data that you can ask your assessment director, and they will let you know what the best form for that is.
So there are those 13 items in the test administration manual, and then the 8 observational items for social emotional.
Correct.
So still scored those social emotional items
Yes.
on the hard copy, or if your school imports it to the data gateway. At the state level, we are not collecting
social emotional.
social emotional data, but
Data.
it still needs to be scored.
Done. Yep.
And yes, we can email the slideshow. Did you already say that we can share the slideshow with them, or no?
I don't think I did say that, but yes, we can.
And then San Juan wants to know, the KEEP is a competency standards-based assessment or an ESL assessment?
It is not ESL because it's not given in another language. So just,
It is a competency
Kind of a note on
standards-based
that.
assessment.
is that it?
So far, Sandy says thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. All right, any other questions? You are welcome to remain on the line. We'll probably stay open for another about 5 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and close it down. But as a reminder, again, this will be recorded, and so you will be able to watch it again if you so choose. Thank you for being with us.
Okay. So
Stacy will answer your question. She said, if they question number 4, all the way back to question
Oh,
number 4,
yep.
if they sound it out and then blend what they sounded out, shouldn't it count? It does count if they blend the correct sounds.
Yep. So if they what's one of the words? For rot. So if they say rot and then they say rot, then they would get 1 point for each of those 3 letter sounds, and then 1 point for blending. They don't get 2 points for blending because they didn't blend automatically without sounding it out.
She said it's a lot like counting wrong, but then writing the number that they said.
I'm
not sure
I'm
I'm
not sure I'm
following.
understanding.
On the counting question, we said that if they counted to 16 or 18, and we
She's
said,
asking about question 4 though.
Yeah, but she's comparing it to the counting one. So if they counted wrong, so
Mhm.
say there was 16, but they counted to 15, they'd get that counting question wrong. But then if we said how many are there, they said 15 again, they'd get that count. And if they wrote 15, they'd get that point, even though 15 was the wrong number.
Oh,
initially.
but that's for cardinality. That's a whole different.
yeah. So
yeah,
that, but
that's not the same
comparison.
as
That's the
phonics.
comparison
Okay,
she's making.
gotcha.
Oh, and then Donna asked, if we're showing effectiveness of full day optional extended day kindergarten, will there be a place to note what the student's placement is? That's noted in the SIS system, like the information system.
Yep, it's
isn't it?
noted in your SIS system. It's also noted with whoever in your district fills out your UCA goals and applications. So you won't have to worry about that.
So Stacy said if the word is bat and they sounded out bit, they are blending, correct?
But they're not blending it right, so no.
So we're testing that they are blending the correct sound. Does
Yeah.
that make
So that
sense?
question, if it really was the word bat and they said it and then said bit, then they wouldn't get any points for blending. But they would. I mean, you can put the line underneath to show that they did that. But because they said the wrong vowel in the middle, it doesn't count. They didn't say the actual word correctly, and they would only get the 2 points for the letter sounds because they got the 2 right.
WWR Cami on question 4 stands for whole word red.
Great question, Cami. That's a good
And
one.
CLS is correct letter
Sounds. Yep.
Did that clarify, Stacy? Are you okay? If not, feel free to shoot an email
To reach out. Yeah, we're happy to help.
To reach out, and we can answer that question for you.
Okay. All right.
We're
Anyone
good.
else?
Good.
Don't forget, if you want credit, give everyone's name who's in the room with you.
Oh, yep. Just another reminder if you are still on. It looks like we have most people marked down as far as getting credit for this, but if you didn't put
their last names though.
Oh, we need first and last names, guys. We don't know who you are, so it's really helpful if you put your first and last name so we can give you credit for attending our webinar. It looks like we had a couple more questions, but Liz, maybe you can.
Will you let us know on the word wall thing?
Yeah.
Yes. Melanie wants to know, does it say in the state standards that they should be able to read whole words because we are going to give them points for whole words read? It says standard RF.K.3 is know and apply grade level phonics and word analysis skills in decoding words.
Yep. So they should be blending words.
I lost my question. And then Amanda Thornton, if you can't register for the Data Gateway, contact
Your assessment director.
your assessment director. And then we have a bunch of names coming in. Make sure you
Thank
give
you
us your
so
name if you
much.
want to get credit. And thanks for participating today. And for your patience with technology.
Yes, we really appreciate your technology patience because it was a rough go at the beginning. We so appreciate you sticking with it.
Donna, if registration was full and closed and you give us your name, we will ensure that you get credit from today. Okay?
Yeah, we'll leave it open for a bit.
Jennifer says the week of May 21st through 25th, there is no kindergarten, just testing and data entry. That is a district decision. If your district has calendared those days as kindergarten assessment days, then that would be the case. I'm not sure which district you teach in, so I would refer you again to your school calendar and your assessment director for
Absolutely.
those specific dates.
Great question.
Okay. I guess keep sending names if you need credit, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.